I'm finishing up my lunch, but I wanted to make a point or two. And you know what? One of my godchildren got me a mic for my birthday. So let's see if we can get this mic to work. Okay, I think it's on. Let me plug the other end in and see if we can get it to work. I do not know how it operates, but we're going to try it and see. Who knows? I'm hoping that it's going to make me clearer, but I may be doing it improperly since this is my first time using it. But I think that, or I know that the reality of living as a Black person in the United States means that most of us are not honest with ourselves about the nature of whiteness and how white womanhood upholds whiteness. Most of us are not honest with ourselves about this. And I don't know if we ever have been. I have a unique perspective because of where I was raised. And also in this day and time, I have a unique perspective because of the times I was raised in. So I was born in 1969, right on the heels of the civil rights movement and the women's rights movement. I was born right on the heels of all of that. And I was born in the town, probably the closest town to the town where the Ku Klux Klan was created. And so living in those conditions did not give me the luxury to be clueless about the brutality of whiteness. I never had the luxury to be clueless about that. Right? I was aware and I was hyper aware. And I had to be aware from the time that I was small. I remember when my mother bought her first house, and we were one of the first Black families in that neighborhood. And the houses in the neighborhood is called Zion Acres. It's still there, but they call it something different now because I took my children out to see it. Anyway, the houses in the neighborhood, while the houses themselves weren't very big, probably 1,500 square feet at most, a small, what we would call back in my day, a starter house. Little brick houses, well built, but not big. So while the houses weren't very big, because we are from a very rural area, the yards were huge. I mean, massive. When my brothers went off to undergrad, I had to be the person to mow the yard. And when I tell you that yard was huge, huge. So everybody had these huge yards, and everyone grew food in their backyard, the backyard that was really big. And so you knew where your yard ended and the next person's yard began because of the crop that was growing there. I had a neighbor, I cannot remember her last name, but believe it or not, her first name was Karen. And it was a little white girl. She was the same age that I was. And Karen and I would play together. I could go, I would run through my yard into her yard. She lived behind me, and I would go get her, and she would be allowed to play with me, or she would run down to my house and come and get me, and we would play together. And I remember my mother being afraid of the relationship and being like, don't, when you go in her house and go to get her, just go get her and then come immediately out. Like, don't linger in there, don't sit around there, don't ever eat anything in there. I was never allowed to spend the night. I was never even allowed to stay once it looked like the sun was getting ready to go down, right? I had to rush on home. And my mother said there will come a day when her parents are not going to let her play with you anymore. It's okay now because neither one of you all is school age. But once it's time to go to school, Karen's parents aren't going to let her play with you. Workman, her last name was Workman, Karen Workman. Karen's parents aren't going to let her play with you, right? And I, thought that her parents were nice and didn't understand what my mother was talking about. Sure enough, a day came when I ran back there to go and play with her, and her mother came out on the back porch and said, "Don't come over here anymore." You know? And then once we got into high school and junior high school and things of that nature, Karen didn't even speak to me. Karen acted as if I didn't exist. Karen acted as if she had never known me. Now, by this time, I knew not to speak to her. But if she had spoken to me in the hallway, I would have said, "Hey." She never did that. We rode the same bus, etc., etc. She never spoke a word. She never spoke a word. So I don't have the luxury. I was not raised with the luxury of believing that whiteness was not brutal. And that's not a particularly brutal story, but I'm telling you that living life in those times prepared you mentally and molded your psyche in a specific type of way. But what I want to talk about today, I swear every time I get on here, my nose starts itching. Trying to make sure I ain't got nothing on my teeth. What I want to talk about today, sorry, had some popcorn, is the collateral damage and how what we view and who we view as collateral damage differs according to which culture you're from. So, one of the things that we need to know and be aware of when it comes to white women. And you know what? Let me be clear on why we're talking about white women. Because this is a page for Black women. This is a page for the liberation of Black women and femmes. This is a page where I give you the tools to stop mammying and to stop muling and be your total and complete and unapologetic free self. That's what this YouTube channel is for. But today, we are going to talk about white women. We're going to talk about this particular matter because it's irritating to me how uneducated some people are. Hold on, let me turn my fan on. Child menopause, you got to turn on the ceiling fan and your bedside fan. And you got to have two. Okay, so it's irritating to me how ignorant some people are, but it's not really my irritation that is causing me to speak. It is actually more so my concern that is causing me to come and speak to you guys again. And so, what I want to say is, you are going to, you know what? No, life is now forcing you to be aware of the actual mindset of white women. It is essential for you to be aware of the actual mindset of white women because white women are the lovers, the sisters, the mothers, the aunties, and the foundation and support that holds up white masculinist imperialism that some of us have been taught to call white supremacy. but we will not call it that here because it is not an act of supremacy. It is merely white masculinist imperialism. That is what it is. And it is white women that are the foundation of this. They are the beings that hold this up. You have been taught to believe, and we have been made to believe, that white women are the victims of this system. What I'm trying to get you to see today is that white women are the foundation of this system. They are the soil into which this system is sown, right? You must understand that. And so we will say among ourselves, why are white women voting against their own best interests? And I will say to you loud and clear, white women are not. White women are not voting against their own best interests. That's not what's happening. That is not what's happening. I want you to look at what you are seeing and what continues to happen. And I want you to deal with the reality of it as opposed to creating a fairy tale to wrap it in. No fairy tales. Stop doing that. Deal with the reality of it. So the reality is they are not voting against their own best interests. That's not what's happening. And you say, oh, but reproductive rights, that is collateral damage. The wombs of white women have always been collateral damage. What does collateral damage mean? It means things that you are willing to damage in order to get to the true prize. This damage is going to have to happen in order for me to achieve this goal. The wombs of white women have always been collateral damage. So for us to believe that they are going to stand by us for reproductive rights is ludicrous. It is laughable. It is absolutely insane. Their wombs have always been collateral damage. How long have they been making children with terrible, horrible, brutal, heinous, psychotic maniacs? How long have they been doing that? Since Greco-Roman times. That's when they started doing that. Right? Since Greco-Roman times, they have been willingly making children with psychotic maniacs. Now, let's go a little deeper. When you make a child with a psychotic maniac, the child is then going to be at the whim of and will be in danger because they are living in the house of a psychotic maniac. Yes. White women know this. Right? We know that they know this. And yet we choose to act like we're looking at something different. We're not looking at anything different. We're looking at what our eyes are actually showing us. If you procreate with psychotic maniacs, then your children are in danger. Because the person in your home that leads the home that you have to submit to is a psychotic maniac. Yes. And they continue to procreate with them and have since Greco-Roman times. Their children also have always been collateral damage. There is a certain amount of their children that will be damaged in the pursuit of white masculinist imperialism. It has always happened and it's going to continue to happen. That is their culture. That's their cultural norm. That is their cultural norm. And we need to quit pretending that it's anything else. And we need to quit having an expectation that they are going to act outside of their cultural norm. Let me explain to you who we are talking about. During the times of our fathers and grandfathers, for you guys, it may be your grandfathers and great grandfathers because I'm 55. But during the times of my daddy and my granddaddy, these are the same white women that would get dressed up and bring their children to come and watch a lynching as though it were entertainment or sport. Those women who were sitting there doing that, those are the grandmothers and great grandmothers and mothers of the women who are voting today. Do you hear what I'm saying? They relish in the brutality that keeps white masculinist imperialism afloat. They relish in it. They were going to visit as though this were entertainment. They were taking home souvenirs of genitals and fingers and toes. White people all over this country still have the body parts of Black people in their attics and in their basements as souvenirs from going to lynching parties. This is who we're talking about. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. We know this. So what is unclear to me is why we have a different expectation from this particular group of people. And also why we believe that brutality is not their norm across the board. It is the norm in their families. It is the norm in their communities. It is the norm in their countries of origin. It is the norm. And the reason that it is able to cement the place that white masculinist imperialism has in the world is that the majority people of the world are not brutal, are not naturally brutal. Any human can be brutal under circumstances that cause them to be so. But all human groups do not have a history and culture of brutality. And that is just historical and scientific fact. So you have this brutality as your norm, and you are willing to put your womb as collateral damage. Your reproductive rights are collateral damage. They are not that important. What is most important is being able to maintain this hostage situation that you have over the rest of the world. That is what is most important. Because if you lose that position of slave master, if you lose that position, then you just become a regular person. And then you're going to have to live by your actual merit. And at this moment in time, they're not required to live by their merit because they're holding the rest of us hostage. And so they receive the profits from our work still. So when we look back and we see the suffragist movement, we say, oh, there was a suffragist movement, and we have white women that we call the early feminists, the first wave feminists. They were not feminists. Feminism is a system that is about the dismantling of white masculinist imperialism. That's what feminism is supposed to do. That is the basis of that system. The early white suffragist women were not feminists. They wanted the right to vote so that they could participate in the imperialism and get their power and get their ability to dominate and their ability to hold the keys to the cages that the rest of us are enslaved in. That's what they were fighting for. That's what the suffragists were fighting for. Some of their early speeches were about how Black men should not get the right to vote if white women didn't have the right to vote. That's some of their earliest speeches. Go back and look. Go back and study it for yourself. Right? Then you have quote unquote second wave feminism. This is what took place in the years, a few years before I was born, when my mother was in her adulthood years, right? You have second wave feminism. And again, you have the cry for reproductive rights. You have the cry for birth control. You have the cry for equal rights and equal pay. You have that cry in second wave feminism, right? And again, I say wholeheartedly, those were not feminists either. What did Gloria Steinem say? She said women are the niggers of the world. Y'all don't hear me? Y'all don't hear me? Go do your research. Go do your research. I'm a researcher. I have to research for my job. I have to research for writing that I have to do. Gloria Steinem, again, Susan B. Anthony was that original feminist that was supposed to be fighting for women's rights, women's votes, right? That's who I was referring to in the beginning, who was arguing and angry that Black men were going to have the right to vote. So that's not feminism. Feminism is a system that is set up to dismantle white masculinist imperialism. So that's not feminism. Let's go on down to the 60s. Gloria Steinem. Women are the niggers of the world, is what she said. Right? So that's not feminism. You're not saying nobody should be a nigger. You're not saying nobody should be in that position. You're saying we as white women do not want to be treated the way that we treat Black people. Amen. Like, that's what that statement means. Women are the niggas of the world. Ooh, they thought it was catchy and fly. She thought she ate with that one. She thought she ate. But what is being said is you treating us white women the way that the world treats Black people. She's not saying it's wrong. She's just saying us as white women shouldn't be treated like that. That's what that statement means. And of course, public apology, retracted the statement, blah, 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 blah. We see them do the same thing today. So I'm saying to you again, that's not feminism. You can look up the definition of feminism. Feminism is supposed to be a system that is dismantling white masculinist imperialism. That is what it's supposed to be doing. So again, this is not feminism. So then what happens? You get the reproductive rights. You get the you still don't get equal pay, but you get more open doors so that you can come and work. And what did that do? What did that do? Because reproductive rights were still by and large only available to those who could afford it. Birth control was still by and large only available to those who could afford it. Right? The ability to move into the work world and move up in your chosen career field was still only available to white people and still mostly to white men. So even once you had what we used to call back in my day the equal rights movement or the women's rights movement, even once you had that happen, it was obvious that this was only to open doors for a specific group of people. So that lets you know this is not about dismantling a system for white women. This is about gaining the reins to the system. This is about them wanting to also be at the helm of our oppression. That's what their movements are about. Their movements are not about dismantling anything. So please, after last night and after today, let us not make the mistake of ever believing that they're voting against their own interests. That is not what's happening. They're voting in their own interests. Will some white women not be able to get abortions? Of course not. But those will be the poor ones, because the rich ones will still be able to do that. My mother told me that before abortion was legal, rich white women always had access to abortion. And she lived during those times before it was legalized. She said they always had access to abortion. So them quabbling over or not taking into consideration abortion rights has absolutely nothing to do with them and everything to do with us. They are voting in their own interest. It is in their own interest to keep white masculinist imperialism in place. And they are aware of that. And you cannot keep it in place without heinous, brutal, inhumane acts. And in order to keep up heinous and brutal, inhumane acts, the leader of it has to be a psychopath. Every leader that came to this place and founded this country was a psychopath. Look up the history of Thomas Jefferson. Look up the history of George Washington. Look up the history of Benjamin Franklin. Read, research. No, look at who these people were. There has always been a psychopath at the head of this place. This place couldn't exist otherwise. A normal, natural person with their head on straight can't lead this place. A normal, natural person with their head on straight is going to get in office and give reparations. Is going to get in office and give land back to indigenous people. Is going to get in office and stop unaliving babies. That's what's going to happen if a normal, natural person gets in office. And once a normal, natural person is going to get in office and is going to abolish the penal system. A normal, natural person is going to get in office and they're going to abolish homelessness. A normal, natural person is going to get in office and they're going to give several different charitable things to people who are in poverty right now. They're going to make sure that it doesn't cost too much to rent a house. They're going to make sure that food doesn't cost too much. They're going to make sure that medical care is free. And what do white people call that when you do that? When you actually take care of the members of your country, what do white people call that? They have a word that they call it. I'm going to type it in the chat. That's what they call it. And they call it socialism because they know that socialism scares y'all, because ain't nobody looked up the word to see what the fuck it actually means. What brought the United States of America out of the Great Depression was socialism. It was socialism. Roosevelt put into place socialistic tools to bring the United States out of the Great Depression. It was socialism. So what a normal, natural person would do when they got into office would be to have more socialistic inroads into the actual citizenry, because the citizens of the United States are in utter upheaval right now. And I'm not talking about the election. I'm talking about just living in the United States right now. The citizens are in upheaval. People are having difficulty paying their rent, their mortgage, the taxes on their land, buying food, buying gas. People are struggling. When your citizens are struggling like this, it is the government's responsibility to take care of its citizens. That's what we pay them to do. But in the United States, if you take care of your citizens, white people call that socialism and they think it's wrong. Because white people believe that the government is only supposed to take care of rich people, rich white people. That's what white people believe about the government. And that's the kind of government they created in the United States of America way back in 1776. Way back in 1776. This government was created for the purpose of taking care of rich white people, rich white men in particular. And white women uphold it because they have, since Greco-Roman times, always been satisfied with just crumbs. Whatever crumbs rich white men are going to throw at them, they've always been satisfied with that. They do not want change. They think that there is no better life than living at the feet of a brutal white man. This is what white women believe. That's what they believe, and that is why they vote in the way that they vote. They see anything else as weakness, and they're going to uphold a brutal white man because they cannot wait to live at his feet and eat the crumbs that he throws down. It's what they've been doing since whiteness existed. And so to them, it is normal and it is natural and it is cultural. That is a cultural norm for them. So please stop thinking that anything else is going to happen. Nothing else is ever going to happen. Why would it? Why would it? We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union and secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution. That's what the paperwork says. That's what the white man paperwork says. To secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. Posterity means your children, by the way, in case you don't want to look it up. So they set this country up to cater to the wants and the needs and the desires of rich white men and the children of rich white men. It's literally in the Constitution. So when we talk about, oh, this ain't the America that it's supposed to be, it is. It is. This is what it was always supposed to be. Oh, the Constitution was written by rich white men who were in the process of trafficking and sexually assaulting children when they wrote it. Rich white men who were in the process of sex trafficking and sexually assaulting Black girl children en masse when they wrote this document for themselves and their posterity. And we sit up talking about, but it's really unconstitutional. Is it? Is it? Because that's who the Constitution was written by. And that's who the Constitution was written for. Constitution say it. It say it right there on the paper. There's nothing to be surprised about. There's nothing to be surprised about. It's time out to talk about who's voting for whose interests. It's time out for that. Look at what's happening and completely and totally embrace what is happening. That's the reality of it. True. One of my nieces just texted me and said, and only they legitimate children. Right? Because they're illegitimate children, any children that they created that were not a part of that marriage, it wasn't the posterity they were talking about. And my niece is extremely intelligent. The reason she's making sure that I put this point out there, because I got my comments on members only, because I was tired of the trolls running their mouth. The reason she put this point out there is to make the point that if you were born in the United States of America, 20% of your DNA is white. They made a law. The name of the book that you can find the law in is The Killing of Black Bodies, of course, written by a Black woman. And they made a law right in the middle of the time during the enslavement period. And this law said that any child born to a woman of African descent or an African woman would automatically become a slave. And they made this law across the United States. And after they made this law across the United States, they stopped importing slaves from Africa, and the slave population tripled. Curious. How did that happen? Sexual assault is how it happened. So while these people were sexually assaulting our grandmothers and our great grandmothers, right? And sexually trafficking our great grandmothers and great grandfathers, right? While they were sexually trafficking them and sexually assaulting them, they wrote this great document that now what we are supposed to refer back to for our lifestyle. That is absolute rubbish. That is rubbish, and that is ignorance. Come on, y'all. I am tired of us playing this game of blindness. And I am assuming we do it out of fear because we don't want to be honest about how dangerous it is to live here. That's why I'm assuming we do it. But to be honest, I'm not sure. I never, like I said, I never had the luxury of that. Right? My mother had to teach me what to do with a gun by the time I was 12. Because leaving me in the house alone meant that a Klan member might come up in the house. We lived in a neighborhood with Klan members. That was the norm where I'm from. You lived in the neighborhood with Klan members. I have seen crosses burn in the yard by mine. That's how I grew up. So I don't have the luxury of thinking how y'all think. When I look at it, I know what I'm looking at. And I don't care how you doing? Hey, how's your mama? I don't care how much of that they doing. I know what the hell I'm looking at. I know what the hell I'm looking at. Anybody who's voting today was raised by people who got souvenirs of Black people's bodies in their attic and in their basement as an art piece. And who then, when what they thought was revolutionary was to call themselves the niggas of the world. That's the people that raised these voters. And y'all have an expectation of what? Of what? So please understand that they are fine being the collateral damage. Understand that being the collateral damage is a position that they aspire to. They aspire to that position. Understand that they did and always have voted in their own best interest. This is in their best interest because it keeps you down. That's what makes it in their best interest. Understand that all of this is constitutional because that's what the Constitution say, and that's who the Constitution was written by. Don't get it wrong. Don't get none of it wrong. Be aware of what the hell you looking at. And stop running around here playing a game. It's not a game. Life is not a game. And it's not worth it to participate in games with motherfuckers who gonna rig it and who always gonna win either way. Because no matter who had got up in that seat, white masculine imperialism was finna rule the day. And that is what is the truth. So now that the person who is the obvious psychopath and the obvious person who's going to mete out brutality, listen to what I'm saying. Now that the person who is the obvious psychopath and the obvious person who is going to mete out brutality has taken the seat, we're shocked. Who else has ever ruled this place? Who else has ever sat in that seat? Where have y'all been living? Because it has not been here. It has not been here. Quit this. Stop this. Pause. Think about what actually needs to happen. Think about what actions you can take that are actually in your best interest and the best interest of your family. Think about what you need to figure out is for yourself and your posterity. How are you securing the blessings of liberty for yourself and your posterity? That's what you need to be thinking about. That's what your mind need to be stayed on. As our grandmama and them used to say, keep your mind stayed on that. This right here ain't nothing different from what's ever happened. This is business as usual. Business as usual. I don't care what coat they put on it. I don't care what face they have put on it. This is business as usual. Collateral damage, they are cool with it. White women love being collateral damage. It is their culture. It has been their cultural norm since the Greco-Roman society. And it is still their cultural norm today. and you are not going to change them and make them see anything wrong with it. Assata Shakur and Dr. Martin Luther King said that you will never appeal to the moral conscience of these people. It does not exist. Their mindset is something different. So quit believing you can appeal to their moral conscience. What rules them and what is at the center of their thought is maintaining the hostage conditions that they are holding you in. That's what's at the center of their thought. If they get an inkling that you may break free, to them, that is oppression. When they believe that Black and brown people may break free and not be held hostage and not forced to work and create capital for them, they feel oppressed. Anything that makes us feel free makes them feel oppressed. All right, that's it. That's all I had to say. Thank you, niece, for texting me that little tidbit because that needed to be said too. Please share the video. Please get the information out. And most importantly, please stop playing the game. Secure the blessings of liberty for yourself and your posterity. That's what you are here to do. The rest of this is where you have been born due to the consequence of history. Do what you are here to do. I guarantee you and I promise you that you have the tools to do that. Ecstasy, abundance, and bliss to everyone within the sound of my voice who's wishing the same for me and mine. And as always, we wish the lessons of life on those who are ignorant enough to wish us otherwise. All right, peace, y'all.